Hi, everyone. This is Nina Collins from Revel. This is our weekly podcast recording of Raging Gracefully, which is our podcast that gets released every Friday. And today we're in conversation with Vicki Larson, who is a writer from California, who's just published, I think this is your first book, right, Vicki?
It's my first book on my own. I published in 2014. I co-wrote a book with another woman on reimagining marriage. But this is my
that's
first
great.
baby on my own.
All right, I'll read your bio. Vicki Larson is a longtime award-winning journalist, the lifestyles editor, columnist, and writer at a San Francisco Bay Area newspaper, and the co-author of the groundbreaking book, The New I Do, Reshaping Marriage for Skeptics, Realists and Rebels. Actually, I should read that. That sounds interesting. Named a best book of 2014 by PopSugar. She lives in Marin County, California, and her writing can be found in The Times, The Guardian, The Washington Post. I've been loving her essays on Medium, which are, at least the ones I've been reading, are all completely relevant to this book. So this book, her first solo book, is just coming out this week, I think yesterday or something, and it's called Not Too Old for That: How Women Are Changing the Story of Aging. And I'm really delighted to have you here so we can talk about your book, Vicki. I have to say, so I really have liked your pieces in Medium, as I've said, and we've published a few on Revel. I think that they're really smart. And I was on vacation like last week in the Bahamas, and I brought this book, and I didn't really feel like working. I was on vacation and I was like, should I read this book? And honestly, I thought to myself, as much as I like your articles, I was like, what else is there to say? We keep talking about menopause and aging, and I don't know, and how good can it be? And then I picked it up and I could not put it down. I'm not kidding. I took so many notes and flagged it. I really think it's excellent. So congratulations to you. I've read a lot of these books.
Thank you. Thank you so much. There was a bit of crying about it in the beginning. Just thinking.
In what way? What do you mean?
Oh, well, because I was having these feelings about me as when I hit middle age. And then when the book sold, I was like, but what if it's just me? What if I'm making this up? What if it's not happening? What is just my own reality? So there were some tears, but then when I started to get into the research and I realized, oh, no, I'm not making it up.
Here. Yeah,
there's a story here. And then I got angry.
Yeah. So tell us in your words, what's the story here? What's the crux of the story? What made you angry?
We've all heard stories about what it is to be a middle-aged woman, and it's generally something to fear. You're going to hear menopause because we're going to be a hot, emotional mess, and then we're going to lose our desirability, and we're going to lose our sexual drive, and we're going to, just be, no one is going to be interested in us, and we're not going to be interesting to ourselves, and just really horror stories. The reality is that wasn't my reality. And even though I had gotten divorced in my late 40s,
like so many of us, got divorced.
Like so many of us, it's a real pivotal time in a woman's life. And I remember saying to myself, why couldn't this happen 10 years ago when I was cuter and younger and this and that? But then midlife wasn't really bad. And as a matter of fact, I never felt juicier and more interesting and more interested, and my whole world kind of opened up. So in thinking about that, I'm like, but why are we told these other stories? Why are we told? And so when I started to think about that, and I'm like, well, who would be saying those stories, and why would they be saying those stories? Mm-hmm. And in what way are women absorbing those stories? And in what way are we making decisions in our life based on those narratives?
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah. And so when I started to realize that and do research, I realized that it actually has real harm for us if we start to think all these horrible things about ourselves. And I really wanted to, bust that all open and get women to realize how much we are getting this information from outside, how much we internalize that, and in what way that's impacting our lives.
That's actually a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way. I've been working for 6 years in this space, and I feel like the perspective I've come from is that it's so important for us not to feel ashamed, right, of aging. Like, why should we be embarrassed about stuff that's perfectly normal? And why should we be made to feel, women are particularly made to feel ashamed if their body's changing or whatever. And so I've been a real advocate for women talking about what's going on. Like, I had 30 women here last night and we played the Esther Perel game, which I highly recommend.
Oh,
You should
I
do
love
it.
her. She's
Oh my
the
God.
best.
Her game, Google it. She has this really fun game and you go around and answer questions. It was so fun. So we were talking about really deep and juicy and fun stuff. But I hadn't actually ever, until you just said it, really thought from that perspective, which is that it is actually dangerous and hurts us, the narrative that society puts on us, because you're right. We could make decisions or make assumptions or allow ourselves to be treated certain ways because of what we've been told. And it's not true. You're totally right.
Yeah.
That's great. I really like that. So how old are you? You're in your 60s, right?
I turned 65 last year. So I am like a card-carrying member of Medicare, and I now am considered a senior citizen. And my friends and I talk about that all the time. Like, I don't feel like a senior citizen, but I am. And
yeah, but we are.
I take those discounts.
Yeah, as well you should.
And so at this age, you do really start to think about the future, moving forward, because things happen. And, both my parents died. My mom, it'll be 11 years, my dad, about 6 years. And I watched them age and I watched the things that happened to them. And I realized I want to be very intentional about how I want to move forward, especially because I live alone and would like to continue to live alone. Want a romantic partner, but just can't live with me.
I'm obsessed with that subject right now, by the way, the living apart together. And so I was very pleased to read about that in your book.
That's my next
God
book.
Bless you. I need that book now so I can give it. I'm having this constant conversation with my boyfriend. Like, nothing seems insane to me. But I want to ask you about that, because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but as you get older, because I'm 52 and my boyfriend's 62, and I think there is a lot of people have this fear of like, who will take care of me? And that's one of the reasons people want to live together. So it's interesting to me that you see yourself living alone for a long time.
Well, I like to have my freedom and independence. And when I got divorced, it's 17 years that I've lived alone. I mean, my kids were tweens when we got divorced. And so they lived with me part-time and they lived with their dad part-time. So I wasn't alone then. And it was something that I kind of sort of, it wasn't in the narrative that I knew of what a romantic relationship looked like. I came into it slowly. And then when I started to think about it consciously, I really realized that I do like my own space. And a lot of women my age feel the same way. They're like, yeah, sure, romantic partner, but please go home at some point. And there's so many benefits really to it. And I don't want to like give away all the stuff on the new book, but I do address a little bit of it in this book.
Yeah, you talk about it in this book in a great way.
But that fear of being alone, I mean, the fear of dying alone is a way to trap women into hanging with people who may be not good fits for them because they're so afraid that they will be alone. And, several years ago when Justice Anton Scalia died, he had a wife, he was married for like 50 some odd years. He had like 9 children and like, I don't know, a bazillion grandchildren. Oh, he died alone.
He died alone.
He died alone on a hunting trip. So, okay, even with a wife and kids and grandchildren, he died alone. So get rid of that fear, especially if it's a fear that keeps you in a relationship that isn't a healthy, happy one for you. There are worse things than dying alone. So I have children, and the assumption is that they will take care of me. I'm not sure about the younger one. The older one has said, yeah, Mom, you can live with me. And I'm like, well, you probably want to check with your girlfriend first.
Right.
I don't really know if they're going to take care of me. And honestly, I don't really want it to be that kind of a burden for my kids. But no, I really shouldn't say burden. It isn't their responsibility, but sure, it would be lovely if they helped with caregiving if I ever came to that point. But I do have a great posse of women, call them the Lovelies. And I've known them for decades. And we talk about, how we might want to care for each other as we get older. I mean, I had a little fantasy that we would buy a plot of land and put a bunch of tiny houses on it and then build a big kitchen and a big dining room and with some bedrooms there that the kids can come and visit, and then we'll hire, people that we need to take care of us. So we're trying to be creative about moving forward. What happened?
I just lost you for 2 seconds, but now I hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the tiny house fantasy, I think, it's a very common idea, right? The commune idea.
Yeah, but I don't really want to live with someone. I would like, just separate but close. And there are a lot of women who actually are doing that. And actually, they've done it through history. And I mean, even before there were the Golden Girls, which is just a classic show. And a lot of women around my age go, yeah, that's what I want. I want to live with a bunch of my girlfriends and, take care of each other. And that's a possibility. I don't know if you know Bella DePaulo. She wrote a book a few years ago, How We Live Now. And she is a dedicated single person, isn't interested in a romantic relationship. And she talked to, a bunch of people of how they're shaping their lives. And, women especially are the ones who are the most creative, pooling in resources to buy a house together. Or
Bella DePaulo. What's the name of
Bella DePaulo, How We Live Now. It's a really good book because she spent about a year or so going around the country talking to people in multi-generational housing and single women who matched each other like on a dating site, basically to find compatible women who could live together, especially if they were single moms, because they created a little village to help raise each other's children, which is such a wonderful thing because, it can be very isolating to be a mom.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. There's also a really good website called Silver Nest. You should check out. It might be interesting for research. And it's basically it's almost like a dating app. It's for people who want to cohabitate. It's for people who want to create like Golden Girls situations.
Sure.
For women who get divorced and have a big house, but they don't want to move out and they need to maybe make some extra money to make the mortgage, or they want help around the house, someone can move in. And so they create roommate situations. It really seems very cool. And I think I'm sure Bella DePaulo knows about it. I'll look up her book for sure.
Yeah. It's like mostly driven by women. It's like women are finally saying, you know what? I want to create the life I want to have.
In the same way that midlife divorce is mostly driven by women. I mean, it's mostly women who are asking for divorces.
Absolutely. And my new piece on Medium that I just posted this morning is on like the his and her marriages and how that could lead to gray divorce, because women generally are dissatisfied much more in their marriage than the man, but they both think that they are being kind to each other. This is a study that said, but it kind of was like the men just think a lot about themselves. They really think that they're better than their wives think that they are, which is interesting. It's a total disconnect.
That does not surprise me. What is a his and her marriage? What does that mean?
So back in 1972, Jessie Bernard was a sociologist, and she wrote a book called The Future of Marriage. And she talked about how there really isn't just one marriage. There are two marriages. And I remember back in
I see.
same-sex couples couldn't marry. So she was talking strictly about heterosexual marriages, which is where we still have the problems, quite honestly. And it's how a man perceives the marriage and how the wife perceives, the woman perceives the marriage. And they're often very different.
Yeah.
Especially in those days when it was very, very gendered, and a woman had to do this to be a good wife, and a man had to do that to be a good husband. He had to be a good provider. Woman had to be, all of that. So that concept, even though that was 50 years ago, is still very present.
Yeah.
Is still very present.
That's really interesting.
Even with, in marriages where it's much more equal, because women nowadays, not all, some women are very, very interested in, having that very distinct gendered roles, and they're happy in that. And I don't fault anybody as long as you know that you want that. But there are a lot of younger women who are just saying, yeah, no, I want someone who's right there, right with me on the same level.
Yeah. All right. So back to your book. This is so interesting. What was the hardest chapter to write? Or what was was there anything that was particularly surprising? Like, I'm curious.
Well, it shouldn't have been so surprising, but it was to me a real eye-opener, is really dealing with the financial chapter. Because the way everything has been set up in society was to make women dependent on men. That was the thing. Yeah. Back in the day, you couldn't really...
You couldn't buy a house. You couldn't... Yeah.
Nothing. And so, and that's really in my lifetime. That's in the 70s. I was young then, but still, it's not that long ago. And the funny thing is, and my parents were wonderful, wonderful parents. My dad was big investing into the stock market. And did he teach his daughters that? No. Why? Assumption was we were going to get married, and our husbands would take care of it. That's my generation. I'm a boomer. Okay. But what we're finding, even with Gen X and millennial women, is that they're still not taking fully responsibility for their financial future. And so I talked with some of my girlfriends who have daughters. I have 2 sons, and said, hey, are you telling, such and such, are you talking about money and this and that? Yeah. She's really good at saving. I'm like, no. I don't mean saving. I mean, is she learning how to, invest? And my friend said, well, I don't know how to do that, because she has a financial advisor. And I said, well, this is a great way for you to learn together. It is the big, big difference between men and women. And that older women overwhelmingly live in poverty. And actually, I was just thinking about this morning, because I was on that trajectory. I'm not poor, but after a lifetime of getting paid much less than men.
Yeah. And then divorce often.
And then divorce and moving in and out of the work. I always worked, but I worked part-time. So big cut, in salary. But I was on that trajectory. And the only thing that really saved me, which is a horrible thing to say, is that my parents left me some stocks when they died. Not enough, but I had literally not much.
Nothing. Yeah.
And that would have been...
And that's the whole conversation about inherited wealth in this country, and then racist, blacks and whites.
Absolutely.
Lack of inherited wealth. Right. Inherited wealth is really the lifesaver for a lot of women in our generation. If they don't have it, I think that. And
I highly recommend, I just started reading Rebecca Walker's book, Women Talk About Money. Do you have it?
Yeah, I have it here. I've just been...
Shout out to Rebecca Walker. It is so good.
I'm doing an event with her in a few weeks. It's amazing. It's a great book. Although I have to say, I read it at the same time I read your book. I found it pretty depressing. So to the point that you're saying that it was the hardest chapter for you to write, I'm not surprised, because these stories are very relatable. It's very smart, but there's not a lot of good news in this book. Like it's
not. However, I think that, once we recognize that, we can talk about it. We can talk about it. Like I started talking with my girlfriends about money. I am the poorest of my friends, and believe me, I'm not poor. I have a house in Marin County. I was never thought I would be able to hold on to it. But it has rental unit and I Airbnb the crap out of rooms. And I'm like, I'm doing 5 million things to be able to hold on to it. So I'm not poor. I am the poorest of my friends because they just kind of like make that salary without having to do 5 million things. But we have started to talk about money. And I think that's really, really important. So, and her book is wonderful. I mean, I'm only halfway through, but it is, yeah, I mean, it was hard because I'm not a stupid woman, but I made a lot of stupid decisions because I never, I was a hippie when I was younger. I didn't care about money that much until you hit this age and you go, oh, yeah, now I understand.
Well, I do think, and I mean, I do think that like you're 10 years older than I am, and I would say it's true for my generation as well. There definitely is still an expectation that we would get married and that like we were not told to really think about it. And I was raised by a single mother who really struggled financially, and I watched her. And so it is I have 3 daughters and 1 son, and I am very concerned with teaching my daughters, to be fully independent and to always have separate money and to not stop working. Because like you, I went in and out of the workforce. Like I ended up okay because I divorced a guy who made a lot of money, but it was never a priority to really think about it. And my oldest daughter actually is only 28 and just told me she has a $25,000 in her 401k. And that made me incredibly happy. Yeah. Then I felt like, okay, but I think your point is well taken. And actually I need to think more about this book, like teaching girls. I've only really in the last few years really learned more about the stock market and investing. And we should all this is like 101. We should be learning it. And someone in the chat said we should have money events at Revel, and we do, and we should have more of them. Like we should all be learning how to do this all the time.
Yeah. And actually I was talking to a friend. She works with disadvantaged students to help them write college essays to get them into, good colleges. And, they had proposals to make financial literacy be part of high school education. Why not?
Yeah. No,
why not?
I mean, yeah, even like I don't think I did a good job explaining to my kids in high school how credit cards work. And now my kids, I always hear them talking about credit cards and their credit score. And I did not really educate them on that front. It's a mistake I made. So, all right, back to your book. I have a question in the sex chapter. So something I should tell everyone about this book, not too old for that, is it's incredibly well researched, like really well researched. There's, 50 pages at the end of footnotes and stuff. She really went she went to
nearly the death of me.
Yeah, you really did a lot. But there was one statistic that actually surprised me, and I feel like a little bit of an expert in middle-age sex. She says, and many of us are enjoying sex as we age. According to the 8th annual Singles in America survey in 2018, commissioned by the dating website Match.com, women say they're having the best sex at age 66. I'm not 66 yet, so I'll have to take their word for it until then. Goals, exclamation point. I loved that. And I do generally argue that women in midlife are having better sex than when they were younger for a lot of the reasons you talk about. Not as performative. We know what we want. But 66 kind of surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, excellent. This is, goals indeed.
It's, I'll be 66 this summer, so I will know, I just started seeing someone, so we will see.
That's great.
But, it's, yeah, I mean, I want to be very clear because for some women, sex is just not where their head's at. They're very happy to be done with it.
Absolutely.
There and there should be no shame or pressure for those women. And I think because a lot of the narrative is, to be healthy, fit, woman aging, sex is a really important part of your life. Well, okay, but that's also can be damaging narrative if it's making women feel bad that they're not interested in that.
I completely agree. This comes up a lot in our community. Like women, you want both sides to be true. You want women to be able to ask questions and explore and really pursue their sexuality, but you also don't want people to feel bad if they're just not interested. I agree.
Right. And there's a whole, we're, learning more and more about ACEs, aromantic people and asexual people who identify as, so that's important. And also, a lot of women don't want to give up sex as they age, because I think if you've always enjoyed sex throughout your life, you're not going to suddenly go, done. I mean,
Right.
yes, menopause can, here's my dog. Hi, sweetie. She's nervous. Menopause can change, do physical changes to a woman's body for sure. And men also experience problems and interesting changes to their body at midlife too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so you can acknowledge all of that, and you can work on that if you want. And also you can broaden your idea of what sex is. Maybe if intercourse is painful for you, you do other things.
Other
And
things.
these are things that, the disability community can show us so much. They have much broader range of what's considered sex, because for a lot of people, the genitals are only partially or not at all usable. So, so
I really liked the way you talked about that. I just want to compliment you. I think because on the way you talk about disabilities and well, explain what claim crip is, would you? Because I'd never heard that.
So I tried very hard to be as inclusive as I could be in my book, because I think that's very important. I am a white, cisgender, heterosexual woman, and we've heard enough from us. I want to hear about other things. So I use the lenses of queer theory and crip theory. So crip theory is, and crip is a word that is embraced mostly, not totally, by the disability community. It's like they're saying, yeah, short for crippled.
Yes.
And I'm owning it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing, a big movement among disabled people, just really owning their lives, their future, the way we talk about disability. And it's a really wonderful thing to see. And so in using crip, so if you talk about like something is wrong with being disabled, that's a problem. So crip theory is saying there's nothing wrong. It is a way of being. And the reality is most of us do have some disabilities as we age, maybe permanently, maybe just for a time. I mean, I'm getting cataract surgery in about 2 weeks. And I'm fighting sciatica right now. And I've got arthritis in my neck. Huh?
I was diagnosed with osteopenia yesterday, like a precursor to osteoporosis.
So crip theory is just saying, don't make talking about disability some negative, bad, horrible thing, because we all will at some point. And also look at how they fought for, the disability community fought for ADA, which we all benefit from. My God, the curb cuts, who doesn't benefit from that? Rolling a stroller?
Yeah.
That is because disabled people gathered together, fought to change the law, and we still have a long way to go. But so that was important to me.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job with that, like talking about, there's just an analogy between like aging, or a corollary, whatever the word is, between aging and experiencing the world as a crippled person, and just talking about accepting differences and not stigmatizing it, basically.
Yes. And that's unfortunately part of the narrative when we say, aging well or aging successfully, like there's a way to age unsuccessfully. That's called death.
Yeah.
That's called death. So
and I'm just looking at my notes. Like you said at some point that the average age of widowhood is 59. That surprised me. That was quite young.
It's quite young. And what we're finding with COVID, because COVID has hit men much more than women.
Yeah.
A lot of men have been dying in their 50s. And so if they're dying in their 50s, you've got women in your 40s. And so it's probably going to push the needle even more. And yes, that's a very, very young age.
Yeah.
And yes, and so, originally, it's funny, this was not the book I originally wanted to write. The original book that I wanted to write was How to Age Alone, Even If You Don't Want to, because the reality is women are going to be alone for many years
Oh, that's interesting.
in
How
their
to
old
age alone if you don't want to.
Yeah,
Even if
even
you
if you don't want to. Because the reality is if you become a widow at age 59, now you have to decide, are you going to be alone, or are you going to try to, find a partner, or, so no one wanted that book, but but that's the conversation I had with my girlfriends too. A lot of them are married, but the chances are their husbands will die before they do. We marry older men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
it's so annoying. I used to be a literary agent, and so I know the business really well. And it's super annoying that no one wanted that book, because that's a good book. It's a good subject.
Thank you.
And there's a huge audience for that book, as we know. Like the amount of women. I think it's it's huge.
Yeah.
I'm glad you sold this. And have you sold the next one? Have you sold the book on LAT yet, or not yet?
Well, it's in negotiations right now. My agent's working hard.
Okay, good.
So can't really say anything more, but I think
Okay.
it's going to happen, and it's called a partners, which is
A partners. I just learned that term. I guess I probably learned it in your book. I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, so the book is not really going to be, it's going to be written with Sharon Hyman. She is she is a woman in Montreal, Canada. I've never even met her. We've become fast friends, and she's making a documentary on it. And this book is going to be a companion piece to it. And she coined that phrase, which is so perfect. And she has been, it's so perfect. And she has been a partner for 23 years. She just celebrated her 23rd anniversary with her partner, because they live separately. And
how far apart do they live? That's kind of the thing that I'm struggling with. Like, is it best to live like next door to each other, and I guess everyone has a different answer to this. You could live in different cities. You could.
There are people I know who live in different countries.
Yeah.
There isn't the best. I think what happens, what matters is, how does it feel for you as a couple?
Yeah. Are you both?
I mean, Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera has a side-by-side with a bridge. That sounds really cool to me. That for a while they had that. Just not in the house, but even some people who sleep in separate rooms consider themselves a partners.
Yeah.
Because they do have a separate space to retreat to, and it's that proverbial Virginia Woolf thing, a room of one's own. Spaces, and Esther Perel really talks about the need for space for erotic connection to happen.
Absolutely, that women need more variety, and they need more kind of tension in that way.
Oh, yeah.
Men are happier with just kind of same old, weirdly.
Yes.
It goes against what we're told, but it's
Totally.
And Wednesday Martin wrote the foreword to your book, and I love Wednesday, and she's a big, she's a longtime kind of wolfer, friend of the community. We love Wednesday, so she wrote a great foreword to your book.
She's a wonderful person. Yes.
She's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question for you is, because I was thinking about this after I read your book, do you think that the stereotype about older women is really changing, or do you think it's going to change? Like, what do we want it to look like in the next 20 years? I do feel like for the younger generation, all this talk about menopause is going to have an effect. Like, I think women now in their 20s and 30s are going to be much more prepared for menopause than we were.
Yeah. There's a lot of conversations, which, was not happening when I went through it.
Not at all.
Do I think it's going to change? I do. We're seeing a lot more representation of older women in advertising, on the catwalk, in, media, TV shows. Not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough. But so it is slowly changing. I think maybe for women at a certain point. For young women, there still is. I mean, I was quite surprised. I think I have it in the book for, gals talking about, ooh, I don't want an old mommy with gray hair. Old mommy. What? And young girls getting Botox and this and that, and like, oh, wrinkles. So there's still some messaging. I mean, ageism is a big, big thing in our society. And there are great books like Ashton Applewhite's
Yeah.
Chair Rocks, and they address it. My book is basically helping women address the kind of ageism we've been carrying around in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is really the first way to tackle it, because if we don't recognize the kind of ageism we have, that we're carrying, then we're not going to be able to help our daughters and the younger
generation. People who come after us. I think that's a really great way of putting it. So everyone listening, in case you missed it, this book is called Not Too Old for That: How Women Are Changing the Story of Aging by Vicki Larson. And it really is about our own internalized ageism, and also about like how we want to live this phase of our life. I mean, I found the book pretty inspirational also. Like there's a lot of good statistics, and it made me really, I mean, you cover subjects on friendship, marriage, sex, hormones, money. It's terrific. It's a really good book.
Thank you.
Someone's asking, let's see, there are a few questions we'll get to. Can we ask the author about lack of professional opportunities for women near retirement? That's a huge issue, of course. Discrimination in, this whole idea of like reinvention and how easy or difficult it is for women as they get older.
Well, there's a number of authors and coaches who are like, yes, this is a time of reinvention. I don't know about you, but I am way too tired to reinvent myself.
I'm with you. I always feel like the reinvention talk, I mean, yes, some women can do it. It's not as easy as people make. It's like, oh, just find your passion. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to suddenly be able to pay the mortgage.
Exactly. And I am, thinking about how I'm going to transition from working a 40-hour work week, because I would like to not do that anymore. But I don't want to reinvent myself. I'm just going to expand myself a little bit. People talk about the invisibility of women in the workplace past a certain age. I don't think they don't see us. I just think they don't want us. Big difference in my mind.
I think that's
true. And that forces, maybe for better or worse, a lot of women to do things on their own. I mean, I have a friend who was working for Google and Nest and all these things as a contract worker, right? And she just decided to start her own business. And it was a big leap of faith. And, opening a business, especially she's a consignment store, when people are not really wearing a lot of clothes or buying clothes, is a brave, bold move.
Yeah.
But so we're all hopeful that, she succeeds. Yeah.
I always tell my daughters, like, not everyone has the entrepreneurial
right.
Scene, but if you can, definitely women should work for themselves. I always think it's the best way to go if you can.
Getting back to, yes, that, and also the idea of money. I forget the name of the woman I quote, but she said, "No one will ever care more about your money than you."
Yeah.
And once you realize that and you own it, then you can really plot how your work is going to be. Now, I understand that this sounds like a kind of privileged thing, because if you're paycheck to paycheck, you don't have a lot of time to do that. And, and that's not a fault of you. It's a fault of our society and the policies and the structures. And that is something to work on. For sure. But yeah, I think, there are some women who are banding together and creating their own things. So I guess we have to do it ourselves.
We have to do it ourselves, I think, is the answer. And your book kind of is saying that. It's saying, look, we have to own our own ageism. We have to own our futures. We have to think about where we are. And we have so much to celebrate. I mean, as you say, it's actually a great time of life. So we can embrace that. Like, I feel incredibly lucky to have lived this long, and to feel this good, and to have an empty nest and have so much freedom. Like, it's awesome. So,
yeah. Every day is a gift.
Yes,
I know
exactly.
it's so cliche, but it's really, really true.
Yeah, it
really
really is true. Well,
true.
I just love meeting you. I'm a big fan.
Oh,
I hope that we'll get to keep publishing some of your pieces on Revel, and we will keep supporting your work. And I think it was the book, the featured book in our newsletter last week. So you guys should really buy this book. I love it. Not Too Old for That by Vicki Larson. And we'll keep talking. Good luck with your next one.
thank you so much, Nia. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for creating this wonderful community for women to support each other. So important.
Thank you. All right. Take care, everyone. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.